Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of The Talk Zone. It's a zone and we're talking in it. I can't believe it. It's crazy. Hey, what's going on, guys? I just wanted to check in, see how things are going with you. We good? Was everything sweet for you guys this week? Are you being kings out there or queens? Are you slaying? Are you praying? I don't know. Hey, everybody. I got a special episode here for you guys. I've decided that, first of all, I decided to record a podcast right now. Just completely on a whim. And it also just so happens to coincide with the live airing of the 2024 presidential debate. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is a goddamn political podcast, but I could, we can have some thoughts about it and we can make some observations and, it's the future of, all of our lives are being determined here potentially, right? This is important to everyone, right? So, I think we're just gonna hang out and have a good time. I got a little Burby here, and I feel like that's the only way I really could watch this was if I were a little liquored up. I say liquored up like I've been drinking all day. I haven't even had a sip yet, so I'm gonna take that real quick. And just watching Chris Christie be fat for a few minutes before the debate starts. So that's always a treat for me. I'm a big fan of hearing him talk about politics while being fat. It's very difficult to do. Not everyone can do it well. But he seems to really have fat politics down pat. So I think that's to be respected and honored and I wouldn't say worshipped, but it is certainly something to behold. So just sort of hanging out here for a few minutes before the debate starts. I think we'll probably have the audio alongside me talking cut in with into the podcast. So you guys will get to listen in while I have my own thoughts about what happens here tonight. Normally I wouldn't do this. This is I generally try to stay out of politics. I went to college for politics. Man, who had their bets placed on how many minutes it would take for me to mention that I have a political science degree? I mean, not even 3. I'm literally watching the countdown clock, and it was not even 3 minutes before I was like, I have a political science degree. I don't know if you knew that. It's very important that I let people know so that they can at least understand that my opinion doesn't come from nowhere. We'll say, right or wrong, doesn't come from nowhere. And so, it's going to be a good time, and I think it could be a very interesting situation. I think we were all a little saddened by the last one. Obviously, a lot has changed in the last couple of months since that disastrous debate for Joby. That's what I call him. I call him Joby. Joby Obi. talking about Joe Biden, and it's it was a real shit show. It was very difficult for me to watch that, and I didn't because I knew I would be just really embarrassed as a human being, and watching just two corpses, flail about against each other, and that's how the future is decided for us, and that's cool, whatever. That's where the money goes, and I think my general opinion is that it's mostly just big, giant organizations behind these people anyway, so I don't give a shit. I would have voted for a corpse. Fuck it. I mean, what are we pretending here? That this, these people are actually making policy decisions? It's scary to think that they can. That's the real scary part, is that they probably do make maybe 5 to 10% of the real decisions, and even that, you're like, ugh, probably shouldn't be you, right? But this is what it's turned into. I'm reminded of the comic book Preacher, where everyone is like, you have this like Christian cult where they're super concerned with keeping the bloodline of, or the original bloodline of Jesus Christ pure, and so they just keep interbreeding with people of Jesus Christ's bloodline, and he just by the time you have gotten to the modern time, it's just like this person's clearly has developmental issues, and this is the person that they want to be their Messiah, and that's kind of how it's felt for us here in American politics for the last couple of years, and for better or for worse, I'm kind of ready for something to change here. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I feel like we need to get out of this fucking ditch, if you know what I'm saying. So, all right. I think who is about to start? We've got some, we're on ABC News here, and we've got some talking heads like, hey, things are about to start. I know we said it was going to start right now, but we need to maybe talk about our stuff first. Few minutes here. Let's see. They've got some commentary. I don't think we want that, do we? Right here in Pennsylvania. There we go, right now. Okay, ABC News, right now. Oof. Keep in mind, I have watched very little coverage on this election. I'll see the highlights, I'll read the headlines here and there, but I really try to stay as far away from this as possible. So, all right.
Good evening.
I think we're getting started here. They keep saying they're starting, but these guys just won't shut the hell up.
Vice President Kamala Harris.
I mean, who cares what this guy has to say, right?
Taking the stage in this unprecedented
it's 9:01. Let's get this shindig going.
Davis, tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day.
I'm wearing a pinstripe power suit to denote my dominance in the journalism industry, and my suit is pointed as well to denote stark contrast to my partner here.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or
90
questions
minutes, 2 commercial breaks. Well, I'm not going to do this for 90
2
minutes. That's ridiculous.
And this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes
so they can't interrupt.
There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have
It's all about who gets the last word then, I think, in that case, right?
He chose to deliver the final closing statement.
How fucked up is that? It's like, that's what it's turned into. It's like, we don't even trust you guys to really have a conversation. We're cutting your microphones off because we know that you're going to act a fool, Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see what it is. Are we doing a handshake? Okay.
Thank you.
Look, he's like, you come over to me, goddammit.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations,
so scared for
the
what this
dreams of the
motherfucker's
American
about to
people.
say.
And that is
Look,
why
he's looking, he's thinking
I
about
imagine
it.
and have actually a plan to build what
He's
I
like,
call
everything's wrong.
Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that
I
young
can't buy
families
shit.
need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax
I don't have
credit that we have
kids.
given in
Damn
a long
it.
time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes
I don't
for
want
their
to think
children.
about buying any of those things.
My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was
sister
a
and
woman
I.
who helped
Ding.
raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000
Hey-o.
tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of
She's going to
America's
kill him with
economy.
policy. I feel like
My
this is
opponent, on
the
other
move
hand,
here.
His plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a
she sounds
tax cut
thirsty.
for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get
He's
through
like,
the
what?
month. Economists have said
just looking-
that
he's like,
Trump's
yep.
sales tax would actually result for middle-class families
And he's
in
not going to
about
address any of this. He's just going to be
$4,000
like,
a year. Because of his policies
she's like, you've
and
got to
his
gobble it.
ideas
You've got to
about
giblet
what
through.
should be the backs of middle-class people.
Kamala,
paying
you've lost
for
too
tax
much weight
cuts
too
for
quickly.
billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries.
Wrong.
Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries.
What does that
We
mean?
have inflation like very few people
Country
have ever seen
buster.
before. Probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher.
Ooh, she's doing
than
the
they
head
were just a
shake.
few years
No.
ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle
That's
class, but for every
bullshit.
class. On top of
I wish
that,
you could just
we
be like,
have millions
everything
of
he's
people
saying is
pouring into
bullshit.
our country, from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in.
I don't think you can say insane asylums
jobs that
anymore,
are
right?
occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
Taking
and also
jobs that are
unions. Unions are gonna be
occupied.
affected very soon.
Okay.
And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado.
Is that a real place?
They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings.
Who's
going
they?
in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country. And they're destroying
Oh, is he
our
trying
country.
to? Is he trying to
They're
attach her to
dangerous.
Biden's
They're
policy?
at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country.
I don't know.
I'll do it again, and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what
Ooh,
Donald
she
Trump
about to,
left
she about to
us.
drop it.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump
He's like,
left
what?
us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump
Can't say
left
that.
us
This is
the
wrong.
worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up
Damn, she's
Donald
digging
Trump's
deep.
mess What we have
Civil
done
War.
and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this
Y'all,
debate
she
tonight,
dropped a y'all.
you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025
Yep.
that the
Knew you were
former
gonna say that.
president
Yep.
intends on implementing
Yep.
if he were elected again.
Are we just all just going to tell each other that these are all just lies? Is that what's happening here?
A president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all
Ooh,
Americans.
she's looking at the
President Trump will give you a minute to
camera.
respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas.
You know what
guess
I would
some
do if I
good,
were
some
her?
bad,
He
but it
can
makes no
still
difference. I
hear
have
her.
nothing to do.
You know, even though
Everybody knows I'm an
the
open
mics
book.
are
Everybody
muted, like
knows
he
what
can
I'm
still
gonna do. Cut
he can
taxes
still
very
hear her.
substantially
Like
and
I
create a
would
great
like if I'm
economy like I
muted,
did
like
before.
talk some shit.
We
Be
had
like
the
you're so full of
greatest
shit,
economy.
dude.
We
You know
got
you're
hit with
fucking
the
full of shit.
pandemic.
You piece of
And
shit.
the
Shut the fuck
pandemic
up. You know.
was not
You
since
fucking you don't what the
1917
fuck you're
where 100 million
talking about.
people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher.
At least
than
this
it
kind of
was
feels like a real
before the
debate, you
pandemic
know. Like
came in.
thank God for that.
Nobody's
At
ever seen
least it
anything
feels like a real
it.
conversation
We made
happening.
ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns.
We got what?
Got
Gowns?
masks. We did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They
What does that
know it,
mean,
and
bounce
so
back?
does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
I feel like she
And the
knows there's a
best
lot
economists
riding
in
on
our
this.
country,
Like you
if
could
not
tell
the
she's a little
world,
more shook
have
than him,
reviewed our
right? Am I
relative
wrong? Am I
plans
crazy?
For the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that
do we
Donald Trump's
think?
plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
God, he
What
looks
the
so
Wharton
dumb.
School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something
She's
that
got a nice
would
scarf, though.
increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump
Yeah,
actually
she's got, like,
has
Fran
no
Drescher
plan
voice
for
a little
you
bit.
because
I'd
he is more
invite you to
interested
know.
in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that
What?
to say. Look, I went to the Wharton
What?
School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country.
A lot of head
And just to
shaking
finish
here.
off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Take a look at the plan.
Mr.
Doesn't have a
President,
plan.
I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice
What's the
President
plan?
brought
No
up
plan.
your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars.
I feel like I've heard that.
Hundreds of billions of dollars.
Heard a lot of those
I had
policies
no
were kind of
inflation,
just
virtually no
kept on.
inflation. They had
But
the
again, it's
highest
because,
inflation perhaps in
come
the
on.
history of our country.
Listen to the
because
same
I've never
fucking
seen a
group of
worse
experts.
period
They're
of
like, hey, you
time.
should do this.
People
Okay,
can't
cool.
go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to.
Well, there you go. You can't beat that, can you?
The president said there, because the Biden
These guys
administration
said it
did
was
keep
bad.
A number of the Trump tariffs in
They
place.
said
So
my
how do
shit
you
was
respond?
good.
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've
That's
ever
true.
seen
I've seen
in the
that.
history of America.
It's gigantic.
He invited trade
That's
wars.
true.
You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military. Basically sold us out.
Ooh,
when a
sold us
policy
out.
about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires.
And so he's just be like,
Focusing
that's
on
not true, I didn't do
relationships
that.
with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology.
I almost feel like
so
this
that
should just
we
turn into
win
like
the
a
race on
court
AI,
case
on
where like they
quantum
actually
computing,
have like enough time
focusing
to
on what we need
produce
to do
evidence to
support
fact check like in
America's
real time, you know?
workforce, so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of
Like there should be
workers'
fact checking like
rights.
on the
But
screen,
what Donald Trump
like a
did,
little
let's talk
stock
about this,
ticker,
with
you know?
COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi! Exclamation point. When we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But
I was going to send her a
if she
MAGA
ever
hat.
got elected, she'd
Oh, it
change
sounds
it,
like
and it
that
will
bodes
be
well
the end
for
of our
moderate
country.
Republicans.
She's a Marxist.
I
Everybody
feel like
knows
you
she's
just
a
said,
Marxist.
hey,
Her
moderate
father's a
Republicans,
Marxist
you should
professor
vote
in
for her
economics,
because
and he
all
taught
of the
her
things
well.
about me
But
that
when
you
look
like,
at
she
what
has
she's
that
done
too.
to our country,
Not a
and when you look
great
at these
selling point,
millions
I
and
don't
millions
think.
of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country.
What are you talking
They're
about?
Criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals.
Are we
And
talking
that's
about
bad for
immigrants?
our
Is that what we're
economy,
talking
too.
about
You know,
here?
you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the
I'm
issue
kinda interested
of
to know
abortion.
who-
President Trump, you've often
who
touted
gets
that you were
swayed
able
by
to
these
kill
debates.
Roe v. Wade.
You know, like
Last year,
which
you
kinds of
said that you
voters
were
really care
proud
about
to
this?
be
Because I feel
the
like
most pro-life
the only people who are
president in
really
American
watching these
history.
debates
Then
to
last
get any
month, you
kind
said
of
that your
like actual
administration
opinion on
would
who
be
they're
great
going to
for
vote for
women and their
are swing
reproductive
voters.
rights. In your home
And
state of
I feel like they
Florida, you
don't really
surprised
buy into
many,
the
with regard
usual
to your 6-week abortion
conservative
ban, because you
rhetoric about
initially had
immigration
said
that,
it was too
you know,
short, and you said, quote, I'm
that the
gonna be
people who would
voting that we
already be
need
voting for him
more than 6
buy into.
weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times.
Yep.
Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the
The
governor of
9th
West
month.
Virginia, the previous
Come on,
governor
man.
of
What are you
West
talking
Virginia,
about?
not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
What?
And that's why I did that.
What are
because
you
that
talking
predominates,
about?
Because they're radical. The Democrats are radical.
We will
in that.
kill the
And
baby.
her
Who are you
vice
talking to
presidential
right
pick,
now?
Which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution. No longer
What are
abortion
you
because the
saying?
baby is born.
Execution?
Is okay. And that's not okay with me. Hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices,
genius and heart,
we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also.
Hey, don't forget about Ronald Reagan.
Republicans do.
I know you guys don't really care about him anymore, but hey, some people do.
And now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people.
This guy really has
now.
a firm grasp of political science 101.
Doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it.
States' rights versus federal rights.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response.
Just so everyone knows.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States
I would play
Supreme
this
Court
totally
with
different.
the
Like,
intention
what the hell
that
did
they
you
would
just
undo
say?
the
Kill a
protections of Roe
baby?
v.
Are you
Wade.
out of your goddamn
And
mind?
they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree.
Talking to you,
that
Catholics.
government and Donald Trump certainly should not
Talking
be
to you,
telling
Catholic
a woman
vote.
what to do with her body. I have talked with women around
Methodist,
our
maybe.
country.
Probably
you
not,
wanna
though.
Talk about this is what people wanted. Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from
She
a
knows.
miscarriage,
She's like,
being
this is
denied
my
care
chance.
in
She's
an
like, I have this
emergency room
conversation.
Because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that.
He's like, well, clearly in Alabama
And
they
I
do.
pledge
What do you
to
want
you,
from me?
When Congress passes a bill
Jesus.
to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he
really
will
don't
sign
think
a
you've
national
got
abortion ban.
the
Understand,
majority
in his
on
Project
on your side here on this
2025, there
one.
would be a
I
national
mean, he's downplaying.
abortion
He's trying to say, hey, no,
that
but
would be
like states'
monitoring
rights,
your
though, right?
pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American
Shouldn't states
people
get to decide
believe
that?
certain freedoms, in particular
The court thinks
freedom
so.
to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a
Uh-oh.
lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52
Saying I didn't
years,
sign
this
a ban.
issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because.
Are
this
you really
issue
about to
has
piss
now
off
been
your
taken
evangelical
over by
base,
the
being like, I
states.
don't
Would
support.
you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well,
came
I
to your
won't
desk?
have to.
Oh,
Because,
but
again,
would you?
two
Okay.
things.
Ooh, that was the
Number one,
question.
She said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing.
You mean the Supreme Court that you packed? What are you talking about?
How unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D.
Oh, let's get him.
I don't
no.
mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. We don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America.
She's like, well, you know, what are you going to do?
And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream
that is a little
of having
murky
a family
to put his name on that.
IVF treatments.
He
What
is
happening in our
indirectly
country?
responsible
Working
for it
people,
in that
working
he
women
packed the
who are
court
working
that
one or two jobs, who can
overruled
barely
Roe v.
afford
Wade.
childcare
You know,
as
so
it
I'm not
is,
necessarily saying
have
that
to
like
travel
these are
to
his
another
ideas of how
state
to. But it's
to
like,
get on
you
a
know,
plane, sitting next
you
to
know what's going to
strangers,
happen
to
as soon as
go
you get
and
him in
the
there.
health
You
care
know,
she
like.
needs.
He
Barely
signed
can
off on
afford to do it,
literally
and
the
what
most
you are
conservative
putting her
justices that
through
you could,
is
you know, have possibly put into the
and the people
court.
Of
So it's like,
have not, the majority of Americans
you
believe
know,
in
it's
a
a little
woman's right
murky.
to make decisions about her own body.
It's like, is that
And
based off
that is why
legislation that he put
every
forward?
state where
I don't know if
this
that's
issue has
necessarily the
been
case,
on the
but
ballot in red and
he
blue
is
states both. The people
absolutely
of America have
responsible
voted for freedom.
Vice
for the
President
bans.
Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF,
I said the
have
word
been a leader.
IVF 6
In
days
fact,
ago.
when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
What? Oh, hey, that mic
would you
is.
do that? Why don't you
Oh,
ask her that question?
wait, why is that
That's the
mic
problem.
still working?
Because under Roe v.
Hey, I
Wade,
thought they turned them on.
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look
Ooh,
at
they
the
turned them
governor,
on. They
former
said,
governor
"Fuck it."
Of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters
Is
across
it?
the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working
Not
there
exactly
right now,
answering the
overtime,
question.
trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the
Unless you're
flow
saying
of
you were putting all of your
fentanyl coming
cards
into the United
in
States.
this
I know there are so many families
legislation,
watching tonight
and then when
who
it
have been
didn't go through,
personally
then you
affected
decided
by the surge of fentanyl in our
to make it
country. That bill would have put
to
more
regulate
resources to allow us to
change.
prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting one to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president.
She thought, she was like, I'm killing it, and then she got a little ahead of herself.
I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies.
He's like, fuck that. Let me talk about this.
There's no reason to go.
Fuck this,
And
bro.
the
Fuck
people
the
that do
issue.
go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light.
Oh, this is
she
the
can't talk about
strategy.
that. People don't leave my rallies. We have
The
biggest
strategy
rallies,
is
the most
let him
incredible
talk
rallies in the history of
nonsense.
politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation, and it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject.
Okay, bouncing around a little bit, buddy.
By allowing these millions and millions of people to
Talking
come
about
into our
rallies.
country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over.
Not really
the United
answering
States.
the
A lot of
question.
towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes
the reason to leave is like,
this
yeah,
country doesn't have a chance
right on.
of success.
I would go do
Not
it.
only success,
I'll see ya.
We'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and
damn,
ABC
dude, we're
News
only
did
30
reach out
minutes
to the
in.
city
It's about to
manager
get
there.
wild,
He told us
boy.
there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say
clear,
my dog was taken and used for food.
Ooh, you
So
sound sick.
maybe
Oh,
he
the
said
people
that,
on
and maybe that's a good
TV
thing to
said
say for
it.
a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
Oh,
the television.
no.
From the city
Saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, Springfield city manager says
No!
there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you heard.
Oh,
Talk
she's
about
laughing at him. Oh, no, she's laughing at him.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
She's
and
kind of doing okay right
Congressmember
now.
Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the
He's
United
like,
States.
yep.
His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, See, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher. Because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And then
I feel like that's so easy to say. Like, there's always people coming in.
By
you know?
their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says
I don't know about that, man.
crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted.
He's like, there you go. It's coming. He's like, it's coming.
National
It's coming.
security crimes,
It's coming.
economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands.
That's a big distraction,
on the
though.
issue
That's a big
of
deflection.
What is important about respect for
But,
the rule of law
you know,
and
yeah.
respect for law enforcement.
Also, yeah.
The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old
that's the,
tired rhetoric and address
that's the
needs
campaign
of the
slogan right
American
there.
people. Address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for. Address what we must do to support our small businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. You saw that with the decision that came down just
I will
recently
win
from
the rest
Supreme
on
Court.
appeal.
I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
we do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear.
Which is a very important state that is probably going to decide the election.
I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value
He's like,
to say we are going to
gotta break a few eggs, baby.
and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that.
Pretty sure it was $400 million.
And I built it into many, many billions of dollars. Many, many billions.
Many,
and when people
many
see it, they are even surprised.
singles billions.
So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been
Ones
against it
of
for 12 years.
twos of millions.
Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now.
I'm talking now.
Please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised
someone's
money to get them out of jail.
angry.
She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal.
Wait, didn't you just say that she took a lot of MAGA policies, though? You just said I'm going to send her a MAGA hat. What are you talking about?
Fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. They took when they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're
5
talking about
times,
3.5
4
years
times.
ago.
No, actually, I
They
say
got
5
it
times.
up
Fuck it.
to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of
Solar sucks. Also, I love solar. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry, solar. I love it.
We have to get to. We're out of time. Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election.
Have you
in just
seen
56
solar? It
days.
sucks.
And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer.
Also, I like it. I do like
of our
it.
democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march
get
to the
weird
Capitol.
with
You
it.
said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what
think we're
played out at the Capitol
about the halfway
that day, the
point here.
officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's
Oh,
a
now you're
disgrace.
judging the police? Hang on now. What?
This group of people that have been treated so badly, I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle.
Wait, those
When are
weren't.
those people going
I
to be
don't think those were
prosecuted?
migrants. What are you talking
But
about?
let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy
There were a lot of people
Pelosi
there.
and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
Throwing some jabs.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches.
I forgot about that.
Spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do. And
how
I would
about
be very
these
proud to do
people
it.
coming through here, though? Huh?
Leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now
Did I say
acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
Oh, he didn't like that.
And clearly he's having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president.
You're talking about Hungary,
they were
dude?
afraid of him. China
you got to go
afraid,
that far down on the list?
Afraid,
Hungary?
I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on.
You know, Hungary, one of the most powerful, economically successful countries of all time. They want me back.
Put it back on day one, but he ended the XL
Hungary is the
pipeline.
Donald Trump of countries.
XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't
He hates her.
But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. and now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and
Hell
the
yeah.
hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place
she
is
hates
gonna
all
get
of
blown
them,
up.
in a way.
Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror.
Terror.
They had no money.
There's that New
There was
York
a big story, and you know it.
accent coming out. The terror.
They had no money for terror. They
they just
now they're a rich
started
nation,
showing
and now what they're doing is they're
subtitles.
spreading that
That's
money
weird.
around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide. And
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, here's what happened. Okay, the damnedest thing. So, my little podcaster recorder here I forgot. You don't care. I forgot to plug it in to power, and it was running on batteries, and the batteries died halfway through the debate. So, what are you going to do? And, and by that point, I was already drunk, and girl came home. So I was like, yeah, what are we doing here? It was an experiment. Did it end up being me just watching the debate? Maybe. I don't know. That's for you to decide. But I don't know. I had a good time. It was certainly watchable, which was much more than I could say for the debates of the last 8 years. So I'd say that was a success. It's an improvement. And at the time of recording this, I had no idea that there would be another assassination attempt on this dumb motherfucker. I'd never seen somebody so happy to have had another shot taken at them. He was like, "Thank God we don't have to talk about this goddamn debate anymore, dude." It's like, keep them coming, dude. Fuck it. He loves it. He's like, dude, I'm so fucking badass. People don't want me to be alive. But we're not here to make a call on any of that stuff. We're just here to have a good time and try to make fun of what is unfortunately something that we all have to fucking deal with, and influences all of our lives to some degree. And I'll let you to decide how much that affects you. It certainly affects some more than others. I think we can all agree to that much. So anyway, that's the show. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.